Welcome to the IU427 garage, everybody. Well, today we start working on the Coupe. Now, we have been working on the Coupe, but we haven't been working for the actual car owner in the work that we've been doing to the Coupe. And I've been kind of teasing him about that only because we have a Type 65 Gen 3 Coupe here in the shop, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to get our turn signal switch kind of prototyped in the car. So you can see I've got a tapered wood block behind our turn signal switch, and I don't have the actual steering wheel that's going on here, but I have a steering wheel on it to move it around. And we are working on getting a template made to send to Dan out in Tennessee to get a aluminum piece made so that we can basically beta test it. So that's the alpha right there. That wood block is our alpha block, and we're gonna send that to Dan. He's gonna machine a aluminum piece tapered at the same angle and with all the cutouts that we need, and we're gonna get that back here and we're gonna test fit that. And then any other modifications that we have to do on it, we'll send it back to Dan with those modification details, and he'll send hopefully a completed unit back to us that hopefully then we'll be able to go into production with, because everything else on the turn signal switch has been tested, all the wiring and all that kind of stuff, so we know how it works and how robust the unit is and all that kind of stuff. But we do need to get this mocked up for the Gen 3 Coupe. Now at the same time, I've got Wayne down in Orange County, who has a Gen 2 Coupe, working on a template for the Gen 1 and Gen 2 because they're essentially the same car. So we should be able to get that buttoned up and get that sent to Dan as well. I don't think we're going to be able to use the same adapter for each of those generations of cars. So the 1 and 2 Gen cars will be one, and the Gen 3, and hopefully they stay with the same design, will be another. But I don't know that there's going to be that many people in the Gen 1 and Gen 2 category that are going to, at this point, need a turn signal switch. So we're just kind of hedging our bets on that and making sure that we have something available if someone needs one. So what are we doing on the car? Well, we're starting at the back of the car. We started with the fuel system. So hang on, I'll bring you right back. I'll show you what we're working on and then what we're going to do moving forward. Let's start here with the fuel pump hanger that was in the car when we received it. So for 80% of you guys out here, this factory 5 supplied fuel pump hanger will probably be enough. All right, it's got what looks like a 3/8 feed line, and then it's got a 1/4 inch return line. And the pump that factory 5 includes with their electronic fuel injection kit, I think it's called, is a Warborough 340. So 340 is not the amount of fuel it pushes, it's actually just the part number. The amount of fuel that pump creates is 225 or 255 liters per hour. I'd have to look it up to be sure. But that's what you get from factory 5. Now, there are some shortcomings with this fuel pump hanger. It is extremely lightweight. These side rails that hold the pump in are extremely thin. The overall construction of the thing is inexpensive. And what we found when we pulled this out, you can see where I cut the black wire right here. But as we pulled this out, we noticed that the hot side, the red wire, had already broken loose from the tab up here. And so this would have been an issue if we ever tried to first start with this fuel pump hanger in place. There was already a severed connection. Now, I don't know if that happened during the installation, or if it just came apart while it was in the tank. I don't know. If you guys want to run a stock style fuel pump hanger, what I encourage you to do is go and find a pick and pull or a junkyard near you and try to harvest the hanger from a 94 and 95 Mustang. In my opinion, out of all the stock style hangers, they're the best. They have a true 3/8 outlet to feed to the front of the car, and they have the same 1/4 inch for a return. But the overall quality of the OEM unit is far superior to the one that Factory 5 supplies. And if I have a chance before the end of this video, I'll grab one of those 94, 95 ones from upstairs, because I have a couple of them, and I'll show you the difference so that you can actually see that everything, including the connector at the top where the wire drops in, the thickness of the steel at the top where the hanger, basically everything drops from the hanger, the quality of the welds is far better on the OEM unit than the one that Factory 5 supplies. But like I said, for 80% of you out there, this one should probably be just fine, because you're going to put the pump in and that's going to be it. So as long as you're not taking the pump in and out, you know, regularly, you should be fine. I don't expect there to be a problem. Now, this coupe is getting a modified Coyote engine in it. At some point, the owner is going to have a stack injection system that's going to go on the Coyote that he has going in this coupe. And so my suggestion to him was that we grab one of the Pro-Am hangers for a couple of reasons. One, the overall build quality of this unit is just much better. It's more like the OEM. So if you look at the top, this plate that holds everything at the top and is held in place with the capture ring is thicker. The tubes are bigger. So this is 3/8 in and 3/8 for return. So in and out, you've got 3/8 tubing. The wire size is bigger. So while you're dealing with probably a 16 or maybe a 14 gauge for the Factory 5 unit that's supplied, this is 12 gauge wire for the pump. And that's from the terminals at the top all the way down to the pump. Now, if you're using a Walbro brand pump, you will have to change one of the spade connectors going into the pump, because as supplied from Pro-Am, it has a mid-size spade connector for the ground, and it has the full-size spade connector for the power. So you'll have to change that ground one out for a full-size spade connector, and then go ahead and heat shrink over the connector just to keep everything nice and tidy. Always make sure that whatever heat shrink you're using for something like this is rated for fuel, because if you don't, it'll melt. The other thing that we added, and we add to most builds that don't come to us with this insulator already around the pump, is we buy sheets of EDPM rubber. We cut them into small sections so that they nestle underneath the bracket on either side. So when you clamp all this down, it holds it nice and tight, because the pump, as it's delivered from Ford, from the OEM, has like a rubber, almost like canister that the pump sits in its stock form. And a lot of people, when they change out the pump, they just throw that thing away, not realizing that it's actually an insulator for the pump. Now, the insulator, all it does is it just insulates that pump from the metal for the hanger. It doesn't make it any quieter or anything like that. It just takes up the slack in order for everything to like be held in there so it doesn't move. So for instance, when we pulled this pump out of this bracket, and as flimsy as the side rails are on it, you could turn the pump inside because it wasn't holding it tight. Over here, I can't turn the pump because the rubber acts as an insulator and keeps everything held in place. So that's what we're going to be working on first. So we're going to drop that in, and then I'm going to show you guys my trick to getting the captured ring on top. So this is the captured ring that's going to lock everything in place. Because I'm not going to use a drift and a hammer, I'm actually going to use a pair of channel locks to get this to lock in place. All right, so I've got my roll here, and I've already cut off one 8-foot, what did I make it? I made it 8 foot, 4 inches. So 25 feet divided by 3, which is the most pieces I'm going to get out of this at the lengths I need, is 8 foot 4. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take the end of the tubing here, I'm going to clamp it to the runway. Now, you can easily, if you don't have a lift, you can clamp this to your workbench, and depending on how long your workbench is, you can just continue to move it and reclamp it and continue to roll it out. But what I'm going to do is I've already got a spot marked at 8 foot 4 down here, that's the tape. And I'm going to roll this stuff out, I'm going to mark it, and then I'm going to cut it in the bandsaw. And then after I'm all done cutting the 3 pieces, because even though I only need 2 pieces, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make 3. I'm going to put the 3rd piece aside for a future project. I don't know what that might be. So let me get the camera put over here so you guys can see me unroll it, and we'll get to going. All right, so clamping it down right here at the edge. A little farther, right there. That's where we measured from anyway. And then we're just going to roll this out. Of course, the last piece worked a lot better. Now this is by no means going to make this perfectly straight, so we're going to have to put it through the tubing straightener for that. But this is going to at least get it to where we've got some manageable pieces going forward. So I'm going to mark it here at my 8 foot 4 mark. I'm going to unclamp it and it's going to come crashing down to the ground. And then I'm going to bring it over here to the saw and I'm going to cut it on my line. Now I'll get the last piece ready, and then I'll get the tubing straightener out and I'll show you how we're gonna get in the tubing straight. All right, this is the tubing straightener. It's just a series of rollers, and then with the knob up here, you can put more pressure down. Sometimes too much pressure is too much, and you'll end up just bending the tubing another way. So what you want to do is start out with light pressure. You'll see it straightens the tubing pretty quick, and then it's just a matter of kind of fine-tuning how much pressure to put on the knob in order to get it as straight as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty darn straight. so you can see it got pretty straight pretty quick. So we're going to take this one, we're going to put it over here in the corner for now. I'm going to grab the other two, and I'm going to go ahead and get them to the same point, and then we'll adjust the knob down a little bit. We'll try to get all three tubes as straight as we can. All right, I've already tightened this down a little bit, and I've run one of the pieces through for the second time. And so that's this one here, and I think you should be able to see. This one is straight in my right hand, and this one in my left hand is curved still. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to run the other two through the straightener with it tightened down like I have it now. We should be able to see how much straighter we can get these. And the trick, as you're pushing them through, just rotate the tubing in your hand. You'll be able to see which way sending it through, kind of at which degree, kind of gets you the best result. And then coming to the other side, work it through over here. This one might need just a little bit more tension on the roller. You don't want to overdo it, because every time you send this through, it puts a little bit of heat in the tubing. So you'll be able to feel this thing kind of warming up as you're putting it through. And whenever you put heat into tubing, you're starting, or metal for that matter, you're starting to anneal the surface, and you don't want to do that because it starts softening up the metal. And we want this stuff to stay relatively hard so that when we put our fittings on it, that they seal up real nice. So this is the last piece going through now. And see, that straightened out right out. So we want to stop there. You can see that one just kind of bowed it up. So we'll take it and we'll send it through the other way. Pretty straight. So we're going to leave those right where they are. These are all going to get strapped to the chassis of the car, which is going to pull them that much more straight when we get them all in. So I think we're going to stop there, and then we'll drop back, and we'll see about getting the fuel pump installed. One thing that I forgot to point out about this Pro-Am hanger is that the returns the fuel all the way at the bottom of the tank. So this thing sits in here. It's actually going to sit in the gas tank like this. But you can see this is the return right here, and it puts the fuel right at the bottom of the tank. The stock one returns the fuel way up here, and there's a little rubber flapper that kind of opens up when it's returning fuel. The problem with that is as the tank level drops, that distance that has to drop from the bottom of the return to the top of the fuel in the tank will cause the fuel to be aerated. And it's going to aerate right around where the fuel pickup is. And you don't want aerated fuel going into the pump. So this is a far better design in that it keeps that return at the bottom of the tank, and there's less chance for the fuel to be aerated. The last thing is when you put the sock on the bottom, make sure the longer portion of the sock is facing forward. So we're going to drop it in kind of like this. We're going to push it forward, we're going to rotate it, and then we're going to drop it down in, because the area where the pickup has to go is in the front of the tank. There's a sump right here in this front portion of the tank, and you want to make sure that that pump and the screen, or the sock, drop into that area. It won't go in any other way. So if you're having trouble get it in, just know that you've got it in incorrectly, and you're going to have to rotate it. These two tabs right here are what the pins on the bottom of the mounting tab are going to mount to. So there's a mounting tab there and a mounting tab over on the other side. So those have to drop in to those two notches in the tank. Now, we did clearance the opening of the tank right here and right here. Now, I've been able to get these hangers from Pro-Am into the actual tank without modifying these two areas before. But since everything was up at basically, a good working height, I just went ahead and I notched these out to make it a little bit easier to get this in. Normally, I'm putting the pump in to the tank when it's mounted in the car, not on the bench. I've just found, for me, it works better because that way the tank's not moving around. And I think the biggest problem that guys have when they're trying to install one of these is they're doing it on a bench and the bottom of the tank isn't flat. It's kind of round, and so it's moving around as you're trying to get this thing to go in, and it can be an absolute nightmare trying to get the thing to go in if you're fighting to keep the tank steady. So I like to mount them when they're in the car. Same thing with the actual sender that's over here. I like to do those in the car, and we are going to pull that sender out. We're going to check to make sure that the gasket's lubed on that one. This one was dry, so I want to make sure that both the gaskets go in with some petroleum jelly on the gasket. That just keeps everything where it needs to be as everything gets tightened down. You can see I've got the pump in, and because that top flange is thick, and this is an aftermarket tank, it takes a little bit of wiggling and everything to get both the tabs to line up and to get the thing down in there so it's resting on the gasket. And you should be able to move it a little bit and feel the gasket underneath it. You'll feel the compression of the gasket as you push down on it. So that lets you know that the gasket is still in its slot all the way around. Now I've got the locking collar just kind of started in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a set of I'm going to call them channel locks, water pump pliers. You can call them whatever you want. I don't really care. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to grab the tab of the locking collar with my channel locks, and I'm just going to start slowly bringing it around and get in a good grip on these at every location until I can get that collar to lock in all the way. That should be it right about there. You can see right here, I'm all the way against the stop there. I'm all the way against the stop right here. And I'm all the way against the stop in the back. So now you know that that thing is locked in all the way where it needs to go. And you're not going to have a problem with fuel leaking out of here, because now the gasket is compressed and the lock ring is in place and the locking tab is past the point where it can work its way loose on its own. I'm going to do the same thing with the channel locks to get this one out. Just going to come right against the tabs here, kind of get a good grip on it, just start working it back. You'll see it comes out pretty easy. Pull the ring out, get the sensor loose, and then get the float worked out of here. And it's just as I suspected, the gasket. Now somebody's used the round gasket in here. Now why they use the round one here and the square one there over on the fuel pump, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead, we'll go ahead and use this round gasket. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean out all the paint in here. So I'll grab the camera and I'll show you all the paint residue that's in there. And then we're going to go ahead and get this set up and put it back in. If you look, you'll see all the paint that's like right here and right here in this groove. I want to get all that cleaned out. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take the brake clean, I'm going to spray some in there so it gets in that groove, and then I'll take the shop rag, clean out all that paint, we'll get it ready to go for reinstallation of the sending unit. All right, around here you can see all the paint is gone. There's a little bit of residue right here. I just think that maybe the paint's sticking a little bit there. It's kind of hard to get in underneath this locking tab. But we got all the paint out there for the most part. I think we're going to be good. I'm going to go ahead, grab the gasket, get it lubed up, and then get this thing put back together. And you can generally get these locking collars started by hand. We'll get it started. Grab the channel locks. All right, that's it. So both of those are in. We can't mount our charcoal canister right now, but I can get a piece of hose to put on the vent and get that kind of pushed over to the side where it's going to be. Although I think I'm going to wait on that until we start our fuel line runs down the tunnel. All right, I said I would grab a stock Ford hanger if I remembered, and I did. So here's what that looks like. So you can see it looks very similar to the one Factory 5 sells, but notice how much thicker the flange is at the top and even the side rails. Now this one's been modified, you know, it's showing in its age. It's 30 years old. The flapper right here is a little bit worse for wear, but if you wanted to, you could take that flapper off, put a piece of 1/4-inch hose on, and extend that return all the way to the bottom, much like the unit from Pro-Am. This one's had a aftermarket pigtail, you know, soldered on it, and somebody used some heat shrink, and they didn't do a poor job. But so this is what it looks like. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the Factory 5 on if you're gonna, you know, run, you know, stock horsepower numbers, you know, anywhere between, you know, 200 and maybe 350 horsepower. But after that, you really need to start looking at something that is going to flow a little bit more. And that doesn't mean just increasing the size of your pump. You're going to have to increase the size of these supply and return lines that are actually built into the hanger. If you are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.